This is the third video in the Introduction to CSS series. In our first two videos, we saw style rules applied to body, H1 and H2 tags. Style can be applied to any tag. And we can even invent selector rules that apply to a singularly identified tag or to an entire class of tags. We'll continue to use embedded style for now to demonstrate CSS for IDs and classes. We create an ID for something that should only appear on a page once, such as a site logo or a footer. We create a class when we want to apply a style to multiple tags or multiple kinds of tags. Let's demonstrate an ID and a class style rule. We're going to begin here with our embedded HTML. We see that the style is in lines 6 through lines 16. We have three rules already, one for body, H1, and H2. And now we're going to add some new rules. Now, in this case, we're going to be creating or inventing, if you will, some IDs and some class names. So we're going to start with a class. Now, a class begins with a period. The period identifies it in CSS as a class. And the name of this class is going to be feature. There is no HTML tag called feature, but we are going to identify some of our HTML tags with this class name, and we'll show how to do that in just a moment. We are going to simply put a different text color for this class. Notice we're using the syntax, the standard syntax, where we have the opening and closing curly braces. We have the property name, and then we have the value that's associated with it. So there's our class. Let's also create an identifier. Remember, an identifier is for something on the page that may only appear once, or should only appear once. We begin an identifier rule with this hash or pound sign. Footer is a perfect example of something that should only appear on the page once. So let's create a rule, and we'll just keep this simple again for now. We're just going to change the color to be a darker shade of gray. And again, we end that with a semicolon. So we have the property, we have the colon, we have the value, and then we end that with the curly brace. So we have created a class name called feature. We have created an identifier for footer. Once again, remember that we have the period, which must start or identify the class name, and we have the pound sign or hash, which refers to identifier. So let's go down into our page and let's pick a couple of tags that should receive the class rule. So let's use a couple of our list items. Class equals feature. That's the name of the class. Now the period up here in the style just told us that this is a class. We don't use the period down in the HTML. And let's do one more. Let's apply this class. Notice how we're not applying this class to all of our tags. We're just applying it to a couple of them. So here are two tags that have been identified that will follow the feature class rule. Let's go down to the area of our page, which should be our footer. Here in this div section, this is our footer. Now this should only appear once on a page, so we're going to use the identifier ID equals instead of class equals, and we're referring with this footer to, of course, the footer that we identified up above in line 17. So line 16 in our style created the feature class. Line 17 created the rule for the footer identifier. On line 28, we applied the class to one of our list items by saying class equals feature. On line 29, we also did that. We left some of the other list items alone. Then on line 36, we applied the identifier for footer. Remember, class can be applied to multiple items on the page. Footer is supposed to only, identifier is supposed to only appear for a single item. That's the difference between a class and an identifier. And in the style, period versus the pound sign. So let's save this. Let's view it in the browser. And there we see, here in the middle of the page, we applied some font color. And down at the bottom, we applied a different font color. So the footer has a middle gray to dark gray color. And here we applied a class that has red. So let's go back one more time and look at the source code just to confirm what we did there. There's the class feature, colored red, green, blue, so the FF says make it red only. Here's the footer, all values being the same. Here, all those sixes refer to a gray, and in fact, that's what we saw. So we could even do one more of these. We could, in fact, change this paragraph or this H2. Let's do that. Let's change this H2 to also receive the class of feature. This is what we mean by being able to apply a class to multiple kinds of tags. And I think you know what's going to happen after we save this. We're going to do a file, save. We're going to view it in the browser. And there we see, there's our class applied to an H2. There's our class applied to a list item. So this is how we can apply rules to different kinds of tags, or we can apply a rule with an identifier to a single tag.